why PSLV has failed twice.
Deviation in flight path that was noticed which led to the failure.
Close to the end of the third stage, we were seeing some disturbance in the vehicle. There was a deviation in the path of the vehicle. Mission could not proceed in the expected path.
How come it has come from workhorse to a warning, and what it means for India's space economy and the global image. PSLV is known to be ISRO's most reliable rocket. But when this most reliable rocket fails twice in a row, it raises only important question here, that what exactly is going wrong. Hello everyone, welcome to Vajram and Ravi's Flash News. My name is Shubhangi Singh and today we are going to talk about the failure that we got to see on today's morning in terms of launch of the PSLV C62. What happened, why it is happening again, and what kind of dent it leaves, especially on India's space economy. So let us start with understanding that why exactly PSLV C62 came into news. When we talk about the 62nd mission on this PSLV, it came up as Mission Control Center at Sriharikota with a very promising start, where the first 8 minutes of the launch showed precision in terms of speed, in terms of technicality, but this launch turned into a failure just after 8 minutes because there was some kind of anomaly in the third stage. Now, when we talk about PSLV, this was not the first incident, but rather sadly it was twice in a row. We had seen such an incident last year and this failure brought back the ghosts of the last year. So when we are talking about the last failure, we saw this failure in PSLV C61 and that happened on May 18th of 2025. And when we talk about C62, it seemed like a huge hope for the country, where it was not just about the most reliable rocket, but also how 16 satellites with one more primary satellite was going to be put in place. It was a diplomatic, scientific and space-wise a major promising project at hand. And there was again non-fulfillment of this particular project because of PS3 anomaly. Now, when we are talking about the vehicle involved, it was PSLV, that is Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle. The organization was our very own Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO. When we are talking about this very failure, it highlights a very important thing, that PSLV is of extreme importance to our space missions, to our satellite missions, and anything that goes wrong here is going to hamper directly the backbone of India's EO, defense, communication, all launches. And it also puts a dent into the reliability that PSLV holds. That means when we are talking about a rocket launcher which has 95% of historic success rate, that becomes very much dented. And that is why this consecutive failure is pointing towards that there is some systemic red flag that we are not able to address, and it is not about isolated events there which are happening randomly. Now, when we are trying to understand what exactly went wrong, let us break this down and start from scratch, where we will be understanding about PSLV and what was exactly planned for today. So January 12th, as I said, it started on a very promising note because it was the 62nd mission in terms of Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle, where it was not a single payload mission. That means it had multiple payloads. There was a one primary satellite and multiple 16 other satellites which were to be launched on this particular vehicle. And it was to be done under the name of Mission Control Center at Sriharikota at Satish Dhawan Space Center itself. Now, when we are talking about the payload in the PSLV, why it is important to discuss, because it was not just about one main satellite, that was EOS N1 Anvesha, which was not for just one purpose. It was a dual use satellite for military as well as civil uses. It had hyperspectral imaging, defense surveillance, precision agriculture, disaster monitoring, mineral mapping. That could have been a huge addition in terms of this ecosystem of usage that we are trying to build from satellites. But it also had multiple payloads, such as India's first orbital image lab. That means we could have seen a first in terms of edge computing visual. We also had IUESat, that is India's first on-orbit refueling demo that was set in place. We had the world's lightest space telescope which had single block fused silica. So all of this was marking many of the important firsts. We had technological firsts, we had economic firsts and diplomatic firsts. That highlights how important this mission was. If you look at this given list, when we are talking about the technological first, we had AI orbital image lab, AI powered orbital image lab right in front of us. We had lightest operational space telescope. We had on-orbit satellite refueling experiment that was happening. Economic firsts that we were targeting, space cyber cafe, that means the countries could pay per compute model, and a deep startup-led payload innovation also. Furthermore, it also had a diplomatic first involved where the payloads were student built. The student built foreign satellite was present, and this strengthened our South-South cooperation, because when we are talking about international payloads, we had Nepal's Munal, that was a student built satellite, and we also had Spain's built re-entry capsule that was labeled as KID. Now, this was the immense importance of PSLV launch that was supposed to happen, and that did not go the right way today in the morning. Now, this very mission, as I am trying to push on its significance to understand why the failures matter so much here, we have to understand that this mission was placing India in a very different league, because it was not just about Earth observation, it was about AI in space experimentation, on-orbit servicing, and also private sector coming in. So this could have had a huge impact in terms of private space economy in India. And it was not just about the firsts that were happening, it was also about how private sector was enhancing its footprint and how India could have transitioned from launch power towards a space economy power. And all of these hopes were not misplaced, because PSLV has been the most reliable rocket that ISRO has had. It has been operational since 1993. The success rate is above 95%. If you are looking into other numbers, you will see that it has already put 350 satellites in space. It is known for its precision and versatility as well, where we get to see that it is ideal for sun-synchronous orbits. Can you tell me in the comment section what are the other types of orbits in which satellites can be placed? Now, when we are talking about high precision, this is very important when we are looking for multiple satellites and their deployment. That is why we had 16 payloads on board. Furthermore, in today's time, the strategic logic that we use, that risk should be minimal, that was ensured with the high success rate. It was cost effective, it is coming from ISRO, and it also had the market credibility. And that is why it has been known as the workhorse, and that's how it could have been marketed in the space economy, and it could have established India's name. PSLV has been so reliable that even the last failure of PSLV C61, in that time we found that the fleet was grounded and the design corrections took place even of the third stage anomaly, and that restored the confidence, because okay, whatever went wrong, that has been put right. In all of this huge significance, where it started and how it was corrected and how it was supposed to mark so many firsts, mark a huge transition for India's economy, where we were making the first launch of 2026, this failure of PSLV C62 comes as a gloom, not just in terms of a space mission setback, but also economic setback that we are going to see. Now let us move to understand that what exactly went wrong. Starting with what went wrong in PSLV C61 that happened last year. Now, when this mission was in place, the problem time was much earlier as compared to this time, because it is 3.5 minutes after the launch. This time it is almost 8 minutes after the launch. The problem location as of now, they have been similar, that is third stage PS3, and what has been identified for PSLV C61 is that the engine pressure dropped rapidly and suddenly, and there was not enough power to reach the orbit. As a result, mission was aborted and the satellites which were present there, they were lost. Now, when we are talking about what went wrong, there is only a likely reason we can understand, because the analysis was done by a failure analysis committee and they submitted their report to Department of Space, which went to PMO. Now, this report was not released publicly because there were defense payload present on PSLV C61 of the RISAT class, RISAT class, and this is where the ambiguity comes in, because when we talk about the report, the official language that was used was potential, suspected, seemed to be, and that is why there has been no clarity or finality which has been made public that what exactly went wrong. Now, when we are talking about the technical and broader understanding, a failure at third stage PS3, which is already a trusted old technology, points that there can be some issue in terms of quality or manufacturing. This is not something, the third stage that we are experimenting with, that is something new that has already been done. So, any failure happening here points to a bigger problem in terms of quality or manufacturing. So, we had no fair clarity, accountability and secrecy for the national security, they came in a balance, and that is where we saw national security going upper on the account. Now, when we are talking about this time, that is C62, the initial stages were normal. 8 minutes after the launch we saw that, and the problem again is the third stage, where we got to see, and as ISRO reported, that the rocket started spinning abnormally. There are a simple cause that has been pointed out, that the gas leaked from the other side, and because of the uneven push from one end, there was a abnormal spinning of the rocket that could happen. Now, the problem here is PS3 has no spin control system, that is why it could not recover, and this second failure highlights that same stage is again failing, and this needs to be addressed. Again, the problem might be that the failure report will not be shared publicly because there were again defense payloads present. The only possibility that public can understand that there was a weak quality check, and at this time transparency becomes crucial to understand and address it, because this is where we get to see a challenge in terms of private sector participation, because if the transparency is blocked, we cannot check on the quality, then how are we going to ensure the entry of private participants and a quality check control on them? When we are talking about both of the failures that we have seen, the stage has been similar, and there have been many questions that is it a common thing? So, is there a common linkage between these two? When we are talking about both of the failures, C61 the pressure drop was there, C62 there has been a lateral gas leak, but both of this had one common element, that is the third stage solid motor. So, when we are looking at the causes, we are finding that their nozzle erosion could have taken place, material fatigue was a possibility, and bad batch of components. Now, this is where we get to see serious questions. If the product that was being used, the fixes that would have been done after C61 were this superficial, and most importantly, the return to flight criteria, was that well in place? And this not only raises questions about the space programs, but also the FAC report, which was not made public last time, because here we are getting to see that there is a technical scrutiny that could have come from an external purview that was prevented, and this is harming our space economy directly. Now, let us understand the consequences as a result of this, starting with the mark that we saw on institutional credibility. When we are constantly saying that PSLV is ISRO's most reliable rocket, it is the workhorse of ISRO. In that context, this workhorse image is not going to function anymore. It has created a trust deficit, especially for commercial launch customers who had paid money to put their satellite into the orbit. Their satellites, their payloads have been lost. And the insurance underwriters, which is an important component when we are talking about any economy. So in this particular context, the insurance underwriters would be in great ambiguity, especially for upcoming missions, and same goes for the commercial customers. Now all of this directly raises questions and puts the credibility of NSIL, that is New Space India Limited, which is the commercial arm of ISRO under Department of Space. Its credibility also goes into question, and the commercial pitch that it could have made in coming times, that has already weakened because of this incident. Apart from institutional credibility, we also get to see a clear impact about space reforms. Now the space reforms that India's economy was aiming at, especially be it private launches, be it space commercialization, this comes into a questionable positions. And the further problem that is added here, the opacity that is coming with internalized failure analysis committee report, that is adding to the problem, because if the failures keep happening and nobody is allowed to know the cause, it is very difficult for the consumers, commercial consumers in this context, to build in trust. So this will discourage the foreign clients, and the entry barrier for the startups and the private firms would be raised further. And another important component from the perspective of exam is the governance angle. You have to understand that there is a direct conflict here in terms of accountability versus secrecy. A civilian agency is handling defense payloads, how that needs to be managed, what kind of issues can be created there, and how will be there a balance between national security and public trust. Now these are the fundamental questions that have been the debates that are going on, and I would like to seek the answers from your end as well. What are your thoughts that how this can be balanced, how this government's angle needs to be balanced to ensure that public trust is not eroded, the space reforms that are in place, they are not at risk, but at the same time we are not compromising on national security. Now on this note, let us move to understand that what has happened, but we need to look forward and what lies in front of us. So as of now, this will not bring a collapse to the space economy that we were aiming at, but yes, it has put us in a huge stress test situation. It will force us into a quality assurance system, bringing in a vendor oversight and also transparency norms, so that we know such incidents will not be repeated. And this will require ISRO to come to the forefront and do the repair work here, where it is necessary that the redacted FAC findings are released, the technical audits are gone independent and proper analysis is done, and supply chain needs to be strengthened, there needs to be certification, quality assessment, and then the approval comes. And most importantly, when we want PSLV to be the workhorse, we need to work to it, even though if that works go slow. So this is where we do not need to hurry up and run the race. We need to slow down, correct the mistake, so that we are in this for the longer duration and the upcoming time, in order to achieve the aim that we have been actually targeting over the years. Now what are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comment section. That was all from my side. Thank you so much.